this time, and all I've ever been thinking about are lost things. How for some of us, belief is a prosthesis, an unfamiliar thing swinging from your elbows. I probably never lifted a prayer with as sure of an intention as a bottle slipped under my open mouth. I know a bar story better than my Hail Marys these days. I only understand God the way foreign men made me. From rib to stomach, the cracked edges of my shoulder blades, so much of this is stone. And all this thinking falls upon stone, and what is a stone if not a lost thing? So I remember telling my father about it, how I came back to prayer, how I found a sweat lodge in some backyard in the city, and I know how this sounds coming from me. How another culture from an outsider's lips can never quite break upon meaning correctly. So my father, he looks at me and says, if I wanted to sweat, I'd move back home to the Philippines. But it was the way he said it. The thin slip of grief latched to the back of his throat as if he couldn't commit to the joke, couldn't make home a punchline. So I told him about the second time I went in. How the medicine man was from the Plains Nation, a built from bricks type of guy who told me a story about a sweat he shared with a pro wrestler, Chief Wahoo McDaniel. Big Chief Wahoo McDaniel who told him, don't you worry, kid. If it gets too hot in here, you should lean on me. By the end of it, the big guy was in the cool dirt praying for relief. In the sweat, everything centers around the stone. You heat the stone that knows only truth and wind, the procession of water, the ache of slow and tortured movement, how a land amasses and moves against itself, how nothing moves still, and how there will always be lost things. These are the things I begin to think about when the whiskey tastes like ignition. When the throat is a bustling cylinder, I wonder what it is inside of ourselves we struggle to awaken. These wrong medicines, sometimes they wake the wrong things. But there were nights when I was a kid, and the scent of brandy was strong, where I'd catch my father say it. I miss it all. As if family and home and those familiar scents and those faint touches of poverty that come only when the heart stutters upon its pulse, and it's right there, flying across the backs of your eyelids, and we say this is what gives a word its heaviness. My father, after all this time, is this what we have mistaken for burden? All these places inside of us where ancestors and memories should be. What is a city if not an accumulation? What else would it mean to be human if not a lost thing?